I'm here to introduce Blake. Am I on?
You're on.
How come I don't have... Oh, did you move it? Okay. I'm here to introduce Blake. I met Blake because a long time ago, he just cold called me. I was in Mexico. And he said, I want to learn about the kind of things you do. I'm interested in alternative education. Can I come visit you sometime? And later he did, and it started a long relationship. But that's one of the things I admire about Blake is his willingness to pick a subject and be interested in it and then find all the experts and just go off and get to know them and meet them and put yourself out there and say, I don't know about this, but I want to learn about it. Can we talk? And I've watched you. I mean, I know that Blake began as a kind of normal suburban life and following your ability to question everything and look at the trend of where certain choices will lead you and the implications of them and say, I want something different than that. And I'm willing to try anything else and just experiment with my life and see where it leads me. I'm willing to mess up publicly and write about my mess ups and let everybody see and witness as I experiment with how to live has led you to a place where not a lot of people go. And I've admired your process. Without more ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, thanks, Dev.
Aw.
Appreciate that. I went on my first long bike tour starting February 2nd, 2020. I made it roughly 6 weeks from New York City to New Orleans before the pandemic shut everything down. And then I rented a car and came to a place that felt very safe and very much like home, and that is Paonia, Colorado. And I was in the middle of a breakup, and that actually spurred the bike trip, because when I'm going through something hard, I will often move. I will move someplace new. I'll move across the country. I'll physically move my body. And when I came to Paonia, I was really confused, and I ended up going on some walks with Dev and Marion along the irrigation ditch. We didn't really. And on one of those walks, I was saying to them, why can I not settle down? Why can I not have a normal life? And one of them, I think it was Marion, said, maybe you're not the problem. Maybe you're actually fine. I didn't quite believe her at the time. But I decided to go back to Europe to try to make that relationship work. It didn't work. I ended up living in Europe, biking in Europe, dancing in Europe, and ultimately writing the book that became Dirtbag Rich, which was an exploration into why some people like me and some people who live in places like Paonia are not really able to conform to the demands of normal life. Is there anyone in this room who might check some of these boxes? Just raise your hand if that might include you. Yes, that's many of us. Yeah. The reason I'm so interested in this question is because I grew up with a super normal societal expectation. I grew up in the California suburbs, and the first really interesting, different thing to happen to me was going to this wilderness summer camp at age 11 in the California High Sierra, where I met the director of the camp, Jim, who was kind of like a real-life Indiana Jones. And he said, what's on your goal list, Blake? And I'm like, I don't have a goal list. I'm 11. But that's, spurred something inside of me. I started to think a little bit bigger than just Magic the Gathering cards, skateboards, and computer games. Thanks to that camp, I developed a love of wilderness backpacking and ended up going on a bunch of backpacking trips in the Sierra, increasingly off-trail backpacking, where you get to choose your own route instead of just staying on designated trails. I read some propaganda that changed my mind on a few things and made me think bigger, much bigger. I also got smaller, much smaller. I ended up downsizing my life into just the number of things that I could fit into my car, and often much less. These are all of my personal possessions circa 2005. I had a quarter-life crisis, and I ran away to South America for 3 months. And that actually helped a lot. I'm a big fan of running away from problems. And when I came back, I decided that I want to start a travel company that takes teenagers who don't go to school on international trips. I called it Unschool Adventures. And that is what I've been doing to make money ever since. That was 2008, running a couple of these trips each year. Getting to know these teenagers who don't go to school, I ended up writing some books about alternative education, self-directed learning. Don't write books to make money. Write books because you like writing books. You might make a little bit of money every now and then. And I continued this lifestyle for quite a while, writing, traveling, and running programs. And sometimes I would run them with other people and the places that they have created, like Dev and Marion, who created a wonderful community and a wonderful homestead here in Paonia. And we ran a big program called the Adventure Semester that took place here in Paonia for 5 weeks, and then 4 weeks in Crested Butte, and a final week in Denver. So I got to fill my life with a lot of adventures, both for myself and for other people. And around that time, I ran into the word dirtbag, which, if you're in like the eastern half of the United States, is just a negative term. If you look it up in the dictionary, it literally means like a scummy, reprehensible person who you don't want to associate with. And we call people who we don't like dirtbags. But if you're in the western half, if you're in like the Rockies or west, then dirtbag often has a different connotation, which means someone who is so passionate about what they do, usually in the outdoors, that they refuse to take a normal job or have normal house or have normal bills, often don't have normal relationships because they just want to devote themselves to the thing that they're passionate about. I was not quite a dirtbag because I was not like, I want to ski all the time, I have to thru hike every trail, I have to climb all the time and live in the back of my truck. No, I was like a half-hearted dirtbag. Dirtbags are often not very financially secure also. They're just like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make some more money so I can get back to climbing or skiing, cycling or surfing, whatever it is you're into. I was slightly better with money than your average dirtbag. And finally, many of the hardcore dirtbags who I've met, they're really like drifters. They're vagabonds, and that's cool sometimes, for a while. But I wanted to have a bit more long-term purpose in life. I wanted to have a vision, not just go from one cool thing to another. At the same time, I was absolutely not doing a good job of fulfilling the American dream of becoming rich. If I was going to do that, I would have had a full-time job, but no, I refused to have a full-time job starting at age 23. I said, no, thank you. Maybe a seasonal job, but not a year-round full-time job. I would have prioritized doing stuff that makes money instead of doing stuff I actually enjoy. I have skills that can make money, I think. I just never really exploited them. And finally, I would have been better about investments, property, equity, that kind of stuff. You know, maximizing my retirement contributions each year. Didn't really do that. So what do you do if you're not a very good dirtbag and you're also not very good at just trying to get rich? You can find the middle way. And what I ended up doing was developing a life that gave me something that a lot of my peers did not have, which was a lot of free time. And this is time that I was able to spend out in nature, moving my body, traveling, meeting new people, making lots of friends, doing work that I really enjoyed, like running those teen trips or writing, but not doing too much of it. Because even people who do work that they love face burnout. It happens all the time. I was able to keep a reasonably functional body, and I was able to earn a basically sufficient amount of money to have savings and to not feel like I'm living on the edge. And I started looking around and asking, like, who else is doing something quite like this? Because it was not something I read about in anyone else's books. I didn't see anyone else really talking about it publicly. And specifically, I realized that there were 3 things that people who were living like this were actually pretty good at. One was generating time flexibility. So that doesn't mean early retirement. It means you're still working, but you're extremely flexible with when and how you work. The next thing was, this is a bit of a strange one because the subtitle of the book includes the phrase low income. But really, what this is about is having a way to make a good amount of money in a short amount of time. And so you can be high pay and low income at the same time. That only works, of course, if you don't spend all your money. Dirtbags are thrifty by nature. And then finally, purpose. In all these entrepreneurship books, no one was really talking about purpose. They're like, here's how to make money, here's how to do cool stuff, here's how to have status, and there wasn't that much discussion about doing work that really mattered. And to me, I wanted to have a life where in my free time, I got to do stuff that mattered in the outdoors or hobbies, but when I was working, I absolutely wanted to feel a sense of purpose there. To me, that's having it all. Purpose inside your paid work and purpose outside your paid work. So this is what you do. If the book that you wish existed didn't exist, you go write it. If any of you have those books inside of you, please write them too. And what was really fun about writing this book is that I got to interview people. I had an excuse to go out into the world and find people who are living like this, but doing it in a version that's different from me. So it's not just a book about how one person's living. So here are some of the people I interviewed from my Dirtbag Rich podcast, which is publicly available. There's Brittany Goris, who's like really the quintessential dirtbag van life climber. She makes her money working part-time as a graphic designer, and she has a few climbing sponsorships, and that's what she does. She climbs. She loves it. There's Aisha, who has a job that lets her work in the out-of-doors, which is what she prioritizes, but she's still living in like suburban Chicago, and she just chooses to sleep in her car instead of sleeping in a house because she likes how it feels to sleep in a car. She could sleep in a bedroom, but she chooses not to. There's David, who's a programmer and has also section hiked the Triple Crown, all 3 of the long trails in the US. Sometimes he would ship his laptop ahead to himself in a bounce box so he could do a little bit of remote work and then send it ahead a few more weeks. There's Jenny, who's a writer and co-founded an online business and is a total mountain goat. Mia is a climber who lives in Bishop and a photographer of other climbers. My friend Justin is a dancer who organizes big, fun dance events, including ones that have happened here in Paonia, and also loves to be in the outdoors. Julietta is a flight attendant who is able to massage her schedule every month to maximize her opportunity to travel with her partner and her kids. There's Brendan, who's an illustrator. He actually illustrated the book for me. It's a big honor because he has this wonderful website called Semi-Rad, definitely worth following. And he is also a long-distance runner and is raising a young son. There are people who love to kayak, and they also manage other people who work on rivers. There are people like Hannah, who works in Seattle public schools, and she's a speech therapist, a very normie job. But she discovered in her employment contract that she gets 1 year off, unpaid year off, after every 3 years of normal work, and she is taking advantage of that. I got to bicycle with her and another friend in Chile and in Argentina a couple winters ago when she was taking her year off. There's Tracy and Andy, who live on a boat with their teenage sons. Ed and Jocelyn, who are Canadian public school teachers, who have also taken their young kids on very long, multi-month bicycle tours in Cuba, in Asia. Tim and Angel, who I recently hiked with in Spain, they've done through hiking. They actually ran the Camino de Santiago, Psycho, and they're both nurses, and Angel is also an online teacher of financial skills to other nurses. Kaya was one of those van life climbers until she decided to settle down and co-found Moab's one and only climbing gym. And now she has a house where she rents out all the rooms and plays host to all the dirtbag climbers who show up in her driveway, much like she showed up in other people's driveways for many years. Dave is a history teacher who walks across Italy, walks across Spain, he walked across the entire United States and writes these incredible blog posts about his journeys. Victoria's from New Zealand. She hiked the Te Araroa, which is like the Pacific Crest Trail of New Zealand, with her 9-year-old daughter, Emily, also as a marketer. And they all are dirtbag rich. I had so much fun doing these interviews because there's so many different ways to embody time flexibility, having good pay and low expenses, and having a deep sense of purpose. So, it was a lot of fun to write this book. It did not feel like I was working to write this book. In case you're wondering, everyone I interviewed for the book is not enabled by some exterior form of wealth. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that, just that I wanted to have a certain level playing field for the interviews in the book, so everyone more or less created this lifestyle for themselves. Also really important to know is everyone who I interviewed is super clever about providing human services. Because if you've ever seen a graph like this before, that shows you how prices have changed in places like the United States over the past couple decades, you know that physical things like a television or a cell phone have actually become relatively cheaper over time because they can be mass produced, whereas human services have become expensive and sometimes much more expensive. And so if you are going to be paying top dollar for things like healthcare or childcare or elder care or housing, then yes, it can be very difficult to be dirtbag rich. And that's something I dive into deeper in the book, is how they do this. And it's not with someone else paying their way. There's many ways to do it, many different paths up that mountain. And this is something I notice in the brief time that I spend on social media these days, which is that there are a lot of young people saying, amidst the cost of living crisis, how are we even supposed to think of doing something like what you're describing, Blake? We love the outdoors. We want to be going on these adventures, but it seems like you need two people living together, sharing expenses, both with full-time jobs, and full-time doesn't mean 40 hours a week, it means like 50 or 60 hours a week, in order to just have basic stuff. It's a bit of a conundrum. Sometimes people in this situation are like, yeah, we just need something like universal basic income. We need to like tax the billionaires a lot more. Or we need the AI to generate a bunch of stuff for us. Whatever, there's lots of people who have different dreams of like the utopia that will arrive just around the corner. Maybe that will happen. Let's find out. I'm personally not holding my breath for that. And I think that instead of looking forward into some utopian future, we can actually look backwards into the past. There's a famous economist named John Maynard Keynes who predicted in the year 1930, so about 100 years ago now, that today people in the rich countries like his United Kingdom would be earning 8 times as much money, and everyone would be working 15 hours a week to cover the basics. Has this happened? The answer is yes and no. Because modern day economists have fact-checked the Keynes prophecy, and actually, materially speaking, we have even more money than that, than 8 times what he was describing in the year 1930. But of course, most people don't work 40 hours a week. And this is because stuff has gotten better. Standards have risen. I am personally happy that I don't live in a domicile that has 1930s standards or get 1930s level health care. Things get better, things get more expensive. And the thing that Keynes really discounted in his prediction is that we are so socially oriented that we are so focused on keeping up with the Joneses. And as soon as one of us sees someone else having something new, as soon as someone else has a nice new mountain bike, and we're still riding our old beater, and then someone gets a mountain e-bike. How much do those cost these days?
I don't know.
Yeah, too much, I think. Quite a bit. Then standards rise. And so people who are able to live dirtbag rich are the ones who are magically able to not look to the left and look to the right and be like, they have that, I need that, they have that, I want that, but are able to create low-cost good times. And by doing that, extract themselves from the obligation to work full-time. There are a few original illustrations that Brendan did for the book, and I think that they really embody these concepts well. The first one is about comparing yourself to others. So if you do need to compare yourself to others, and let's be honest, we all do, instead of comparing your proverbial neighbor and how much stuff they have, their car, how big their house, how many toys they have, you can compare how much freedom you have to your neighbors. And I'm not just talking about this like Wild West hyper-independence thing, abstract thing we call freedom. By freedom, I mean the freedom to do stuff that's meaningful, that doesn't cost that much money. And so for me, that includes writing, dancing, going to visit my friends and family, reading books, being out in nature. Most of this stuff, outside of maybe a little initial investment, does not cost that much money. When you can have a genuinely amazing time doing this kind of stuff, then you are really actually quite free. And your neighbors might be looking at you and be like, how are they able to go hiking on a Wednesday? The whole book is organized around three principles: time, money, and purpose. And I love this graph because the first graph is like the traditional way to think about how you work as an adult. Mostly focus on making money. Don't worry too much about free time or time flexibility. Don't be too concerned about purpose and meaning, because later, in your 60s or later, you can cash in all the money that you've earned in this mythological period we call retirement. And then you have all the time to look for all the purpose you want. You can go birding. You can finally read that great book. You can finally hike the Pacific. You can go on all those bike packing oh gosh, oh my hips. Oh, I'm 43 and my hips hurt. Do not wait till retirement. The dirtbag rich are people who say, no, 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 no. I'm not buying that. I will save some money for the future. I will not live only for the present, but I will optimize for time, money, and purpose right now, today. Age 22, age 35, age whatever. It begins now. And finally, and most importantly, no matter how you do this, I feel like the point of trying to do something called Dirtbag Rich is to be able to wake up most mornings and say, I get to do this, instead of I have to do this on a regular basis. None of us escape I have to. We have obligations to other people. There are things that come up in our life that we can't predict. Sometimes we have to do things. It's not about total freedom and zero responsibility. But the more that you can wake up and say, I get to go for this hike, I get to go to this job, I get to spend time with these people, that's the point of having all the freedom. That's the point of having the flexibility. So you can say, I get to. That's why I wrote Dirtbag Rich. Thank you. And if you ever want to read more of the stuff that I write, you can go to my website, and there's all sorts of fascinating and sometimes disturbing things on there. My newsletter, which is The Adventures of Blake, and there are also books available for purchase. Hey, thanks for coming to my talk.